listening to the Getting Salty Experience podcast.
My name is Paul Hashagen. My grandfather was a firefighter, and when I was a youngster, I got a few model fire trucks, and one of them was a rescue truck. And I asked him what that truck did. He says they rescue firemen.
Let's help a little bit here.
And I kind of knew right then what I wanted to do.
All throughout the country, there was a couple of rescues right in a close period of time that Paul was involved in that made the whole country aware of Paul Hashagen. One was the news helicopter crash when he rescued the news reporter and the pilot from the helicopter. Paul was the rescue diver that went out. He went down not once, but twice.
Well, I like to kid all my friends that work in other boroughs, that I work in the city and they work in the suburbs. I've been underneath the top parts of bridges. I've been in tunnels. I've been in collapsed buildings. I've been in submerged vehicles, on top of skyscrapers, in tenements, inside of tanks. Whatever could happen eventually happens around here.
And then there were two.
I don't know who that guy is. He's got dark hair. I don't know that.
Welcome back to another History with Hashagen. I was going to ask you while I'm watching that, like, as you watch that, does the adrenaline get going again? Like, you miss even just driving rescue one around Manhattan, going to those crazy different boxes. Is that, like, what does it do for you when you watch that?
Yeah, I knew that leaving. I had a good cushion being in the volunteers. Also, I knew that I could still go to fires. I could still hang out at the firehouse. But I knew when I backed that truck in for the last time that I was going to miss driving that truck, and I really do.
Yeah. What day was that? Do you remember what day did you retire?
Oh, good question. January 14th, 2003, I believe.
Wow. Backed it in for the last time, huh, fella?
Yeah, it was a night tour.
Uh-huh. Do anything the night before? Get any
No,
job?
we didn't go out with a bang. I did get Bob Morris had been the captain for I guess about a year or so, towards the very end of my career there, and I went to a bunch of jobs with him, but never really that one hang your hat on kind of job, you know.
Uh-huh.
And I knew he was going to be my last captain while I was there, and I was always kind of hoping that I'd get a good job with him, you know, just to check that box off. And I guess about 2 weeks before I'm going to retire, we get a job early in the morning. I guess we're at 7 o'clock in the morning, and we go rolling out to it. It was on the Upper East Side, Lexington Avenue or Park Avenue, one of those. And remember turning the corner and ready to head the wrong way down the street because it was close, and we got a big truck and we can do that. And the amount of fire coming out of this occupied building, it looked like the space shuttle was taking off sideways. And it was just a 1075, and I'm looking at this and going, what are they waiting for? There's so much fire. It was amazing. It was one hell of a job to go out on. It was It was a really tough job. My job at that time was to go to the nozzle and make sure that it didn't leave the area if I had guys above it, and just chasing kinks and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I was a good doorman. And I ended up, I don't remember seeing the officer, but I ended up being like the officer on the line and helping these guys get that line in. And my God, that was a lot of fire, a couple thousand square feet of fire. And
Wow.
These guys wouldn't give that line up, and they kept going. And then at the end, they broke my chops because I had two of them in Proby school. And I told them at Proby school, don't ever give the line to the rescue. Never trying to get the nozzle from them.
Hey, they listened to what you said, man.
That was great. They ended up getting, I think, the Burn Center unit citation for the best unit job of the year, and it really was. They put out a lot of fire, man. It was cool. That was a great fire to go out on.
Yeah, there you go, brother. You went out. You did go out with a bang. Close enough, right?
Kinda.
All right. So what are we going to talk about today? Let me pull up the. But first we got to put in your. Mr. Hashagen's banner. If you want any of these books or decals or these children's books, go over to www.paulhashagen.com. You got 100 Years of Valor. You're working on the second part of that almost, right? Another rescue book. Stories of Fire, A Distant Fire, read them all. Get over there and pick some of that up. Support the cause, fellas. What's the new book going to be called again? Do we
Rescue Squad.
Rescue Squad.
Yeah, that should, hopefully that'll be out. It's the last of the editing is being done now, and the cover. I have a design for the cover. But
very cool. Maybe by Christmas, you think?
I hope so. Yeah.
Great Christmas present.
I'm hoping. We'll see. Fingers crossed.
All right, brother. But today we're going to be talking about everybody knows this guy's name because of the medal, but probably nobody knows about this man. And that's Dr. Harry Archer.
That's the man right there, Dr. Archer.
Named the medal after him.
Yep. That would all come a little bit later. That was a guy who made his name. He was very famous in the city at the time. We'll go back to the beginning with him, as we like to with everybody.
Wayback Machine. What year are we talking about?
Yeah, we'll set the Wayback Machine for 1868.
That's right after the Civil War.
Right after the Civil War, the professional department had started in 1865, and on April 23rd, a little son was born to a socially prominent family. And, they lived on Fifth Avenue across from St. Patrick's Cathedral in a nice mansion there. And young Harry, like the other kids in the neighborhood, if the fire engine came out, everybody would chase after it, and they all wanted to, watch it, the spectacle of the horses and all the shiny stuff on it and the bells and the whistles and the smoke. And, back in those days, it was quite a thing. So if he's born in 68, so the mid-70s, he's a little kid running around the street. Shiny rigs go by, all the galloping and the whistles and the bells. And
no TV, no phones. That's it, man. That's your entertainment.
That was entertainment. Everybody ran down the block. So while he was in grammar school, he was stopping by the firehouses. But one of the things that I think happened, unlike a lot of the little street urchins and the newsboys and all that, he was from a family, so he had good clothes. He's probably always clean. He's getting a very good education, so he's a smart kid. And he probably just doesn't want anything from the firemen other than to figure out what they're doing.
Right.
So he does pretty well. If you throw up picture number 1 there, I actually found pictures of his parents.
Oh, wow.
Now, with all due respect to the woman, my grandfather had a phrase for women that looked like that she was as handsome as a well-kept grave.
Yeah, man, they were hard days back then, Paul, even if you had money.
Well, if you had, even with the money, those whalebone corsets and all the other crazy clothes they made the women wear it. But
looks like his grandmother, for crying out loud. Yeah,
but his parents were well-to-do. They had a lot to do with the church.
Honorary. What was he? Was he a judge or something?
The honorable.
Honorable.
You know what? I'm trying to think of what he did. It'll come to me.
Okay.
But I know they endowed that church. They put a lot of money in for stuff like that. Archer was he finished school and he goes to Columbia University, and he finishes Columbia University. And then if you throw up number 2, he goes to Bellevue Medical College. That's what that looked like back in the day. And while he goes to that college, if you go to 3, part of the learning curve for a new doctor back in those days is they took the Proby doctors and they stuck them on the ambulance. And there weren't many ambulances. There was a couple. And as we've talked about a lot on this podcast, there really wasn't emergency room service available. All this stuff was just starting out, but I wouldn't doubt that Dr. Archer, a young Dr. Archer, was jumping onto the back of that very ambulance. And now he's going to emergencies or fire situations or whatever catastrophes are happening in the back of that ambulance.
And it's building a taste for the fire service.
Well, right? Yeah, he already had a little gleam in his eye for the firemen and the rigs and everything. And now he's showing up and they're getting beat up from the smoke and the illuminating gas and everything else that's going on inside the burning building. So this is where he officially starts getting a taste for it. And then when his tour ends, that he's no longer the Johnny Bop on the ambulance, he continues to go to fires on his own. He realizes that nobody else is really doing it, and he just takes it upon himself. He's not wanting for money.
Right.
He's a young single guy at this point, and he just starts buffing these fires and helping out where he can.
How does he, Paul? Like today, you have the buffs who listen to the scanners, of course, and on their phone. How did these guys buff out back then? How did they know there was a fire?
From what I understand, because when I first got into Rescue 1 back in '83, there was some of these old guys were still around that hung around with Archer and all those guys. And there was a bunch of them. There was Thomas Crimmins, who they later named a medal after. Nathaniel Thurston, who was a colonel in the New York National Guard. He was another big buff. Jacob Rupert, who was a businessman, ended up buying the Yankees, built Yankee Stadium, and then acquired Babe Ruth. And we all know how that turned out.
Yeah. He was a fire buff too?
He was a fire buff. And his father owned the brewery, Rupert's Brewery, so they had lots of money. He worked there. Jacob worked there. He also was a congressman for a while. And then he got the Yankees. So, he was doing, very, very well. If you go to, so we stay in order. If you go to 4 for a minute. No, number 4.
That's 4A. I don't have a 4. I have a 4A, 4B, 4C, no 4.
Well, you really should have. So we're going to have to talk to you about that. Well, but here's some of the guys that we were just talking about. You got Thomas Crimmins there, Thurston, who was in the National Guard, Simon Bertano, who is the 4th there.
Uh-huh.
He had a big book company in the city. He was a bookseller. That's young Dr. Archer with the alfalfa Schweitzer haircut, like from the Little Rascals there. And all these other guys. This Jacob Rupert is the second from the right.
Uh-huh.
So these guys, they had a lot of money, and they did stuff for the department. If it was a long night, they'd buy coffee, and they were reaching in their pockets constantly. And Archer was not only reaching into his pocket, but he was giving them his time. And there's nothing more valuable, especially the older you get, you realize there's nothing more valuable than your time.
Yep. Can't buy it. Can't trade it. Can't do nothing.
The one picture that you can't find there was just the earliest picture I could find of Doc Archer. He's bending over a guy that's laying on the ground, and he's taking care of a knocked out fireman. If you go to 4B, you can see that's one of the buffs that Archer was hanging around with. That's Jacob Rupert Jr. And that's his plaque at Yankee Stadium. So,
oh wow, I didn't know he had a plaque at Yankee Stadium. That's amazing.
Well, he took the Yanks from like a second division team to the world champions, and started that whole dynasty going. So he's the guy that set it in motion. And virtually when he got Babe Ruth, that changed everything. And then the new Yankee Stadium, the house that Ruth built, and the way he built it was ticket sales. So that was really, really good.
Right. Now, what year did the Bell Club come about? Because they had an alarm box right in their club, right?
Well, going to that, yes, the Bell Club. I don't remember the year of origin, right, but they did get bells wired in. One of the things I'm
wondering how these guys knew about the job.
One of the ways they used to do it is they used to hang out. From what I understand, the term buff doesn't come from shining a rig or anything. It comes from a buffalo coat. Meanwhile, as all of this is going on, if you look at Doc Archer is a young doctor, so it's probably now in the 1880s.
Uh-huh.
And the late 1880s. Meanwhile, out west, it's the last of the Plains Indians. The Sioux are out there still fighting and winning. They beat Custer in 75, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the ghost dance, all this other thing. It's really the last hurrah for the the Native Americans as far as fighting back and trying to keep control of their land. And one of the ways they actually were able to beat the Native Americans is take the food source away. And they had guys like Buffalo Bill and all these people would go out on trains and just shoot the buffaloes from the trains and just kill them for the robes, and left the meat there to spoil.
Right.
You know, the Indians lived off the buffalo, but they used every single part of it.
Right.
The bones, they made whistles and jewelry and weapons, and like they didn't throw anything away. There was
you
no
see that you see that in the movie Dances with Wolves when they come over the top and you see all the buffalo still there with just their hides gone, and the people are like amazing.
Well, then those hides then came back east,
Mm-hmm.
and the richer guys, it must have been, if it could keep a big ass buffalo nice and warm in a snowstorm, imagine what it's going to do for some well-to-do guy in the city.
Right.
So they got these big buffalo coats, and you look at the old pictures of the college rah-rahs and all those guys with those big giant coats on. That's where the term buffaloes, because they looked like a herd of buffaloes going to a fire, especially in the wintertime. Here come all these buffalo coats. So here come the buffs. And
Nugget, I don't have my thing working. Otherwise, nope.
Yeah, we'll have to get a cooler sound for that.
Yeah, we got to get a cooler sound effect, Paul.
But you know, those guys we saw, they're going to these fires, and they used to hang around where the division chiefs were.
Right.
And they would hang out at a firehouse, or when the bell club started and they had the bells, they would listen to the bells, and then they would jump on mass transportation, or later on, if somebody had a car, they would jump into a car. But they were buffing multiple alarm fires. If it was a two-bagger came in downtown, they'd all jump on the subway and go downtown and buff the fire.
In their buffalo jackets.
In their buffalo jackets. And then they had honorary badges, and those badges would allow them into the fire lines. So if the cops put a rope up, these buffs would be allowed to go past the rope, being honorary members of the department, so they could get closer and watch what was
almost
going
like a press pass.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So they didn't just give them away. The commissioner and the fire chief were in charge of who was going to be an honorary member and all that stuff. And these guys, they put in the time and they put in the effort. As a matter of fact, Archer, when he graduates medical school and all the rest of it, he starts hanging out with the firemen in the street. And once he starts regularly buffing, he gets involved with some of these buffs doing work for the department. And they did committee work for the department, not cleaning up the building like we call committee work, but they were on actual civic committees for parades and purchasing new equipment and, you know, whatever the big thing that's going to happen next. If the fire department was involved, they would send Doc Archer or Bertano or one of those guys to a meeting, because the fire chief's running around being a fire chief. And then he'd come back and they'd say, oh, they're going to have this. And I told them we could do that and we could do this. So they were a good interface. They freed the fire chiefs up from a lot of the political nonsense and made those guys feel cool. Some of them were wearing uniforms.
We keep coming back to the same guy who, when they were forming Rescue One, that the rich buff went over to Europe, right? To look.
Right.
So he was doing, groundwork.
Yeah. All of these guys were doing it. And, now, Archer, besides doing this, buffing the fires and stuff, he's actually going to work at the fires. And he went to the Hotel Royal fire, which you and I were just talking about before. That's back in 1892. The Windsor Hotel fire, he was there in 99. Tarrant's Drug House in 1900. Park Avenue Hotel in 1902. He went on the mutual aid to Baltimore, and thank God he did.
Oh, right. We talked about that.
He's the only person who brought money. So that's how they ate. You send all these guys down.
No money, no food.
Classic New York City. They send all these guys down. They think enough of getting a ferry boat and then a train, and then put all those people on the ferry boat and the train, and then send them to Baltimore. And nobody thought to bring any money or extra clothes or anything, but whatever.
Right.
It all worked.
You know what I was going to ask you? I wonder what the rest of the aristocrats thought about what these guys were doing. I wonder if they looked down their nose at these guys for following fires around.
I think some of them, but I think also if you were the kind that were looking down your nose at anybody, you're going to look down at everybody.
Right.
But I think there was other people that realized that these guys were doing good work. Even the rich people like the fire department.
Right.
So what's not to like about somebody that's going to risk their life to save you and your property? So, it's easy to like a fireman. And and they did that. So now Doc Archer gets his official recognition in 1907 when he becomes an honorary medical officer with the rank of battalion chief. So, and then shortly thereafter, it was even on the orders that he's working for the fire chief. He's an honorary medical officer. He's to be listened to. The chief of the department said he's to be listened to. His orders are to be followed, but we're not going to pay him. So if he told you that you had to go back to work because you're not sick enough, you went back to work. If he told you you had to go to the hospital, you went to the hospital. So he had all the power of a regular medical officer, but he just didn't get paid.
Not that he needed it anyway.
No, he didn't need the money. No.
Right.
So he starts now. He's worked his way in, and if you go to 4C, that's him driving the chief's car.
Who's he in there with? That guy looks like a mayor or something.
The guy in the back is the guy who was the publisher of the Chief magazine.
Oh, I see what it says. Yeah.
And then the fireman. That is Archer's own little red Chief's car that he purchased. And it's hard to see on this, but I have a better picture of it. Down next to the running board there, where you see the spare tire, behind that's a little box. He had custom built compartments on this car where he could put medical equipment and it wouldn't get wet or get road crap on it or whatever. So it was a little rolling ambulance. It couldn't really take you to the hospital, but he had all his stuff stashed away in there. He paid for it. It was red. It had a bell, probably a hand crank siren eventually.
FDNY license plate on the front.
Yep. And he had a fire department driver that came from 56 Engine, which was over on 83rd Street. But a lot of these guys, even if they had the driver, the guy would act as an aide for him. I guess keep lists of names and all that. And eventually, when they had the ambulance, that car was probably housed in 56 Engine. And when a second alarm came in, the guy would roll over to Archer's house. He'd come running down the stoop. That's probably what it looked like right behind there. He lived in a brownstone around the corner. So he'd get right out. He had bells in his house. So if you look at number 5.
That's a great picture, man.
It is a great picture, isn't it? Now, there he is again. He's in his quasi-uniform. He's got
Chief's helmet.
A blue uniform on with boots. He's got the cap on there. And that's that Pentagon badge, the 5-sided badge. Did you ever see that one?
On the, On
his hat. You ever see the 5-sided Chief's badge?
I see it now.
I'm trying to think of I have one. I don't remember where it is.
It looks like you have one right here, number 6.
That's it. Yep. Good. There it is. I outsmarted myself. I had it right there.
Smarter than you thought.
So yeah, that's what he's wearing on his hat. He's the medical officer.
Right.
So he's in like Flynn. Oh, by the way, there's the lighting.
I was looking at that.
That hand lantern is what they used. Flashlights didn't really come in until the 1910s, 1915s. Rescue 1 had 2 flashlights, and it was a big deal to have a flashlight.
Ooh, yeah.
Everybody was using those lanterns before that. So you're going into a burning building with a kerosene lantern. I gotta love it. But you did the best you could, right?
You had to go what you had, right, at the time. That's great.
So in 1912, if you go to number 7, in 1912, we get that fire in the Equitable. We talked a lot about that in another episode. That's the very, very beginnings of the fire. Not too much ice yet. But Dr. Archer responded to the Equitable, and after a major collapse, he went into the collapse area and worked side by side with a bunch of firemen as they were digging out those that were trapped and trying to find those that were missing. And it was a heavy smoke condition. The building was coming apart. Things are falling down all around them. And he was giving them shots of morphine and feeding them soup and whatever he could to make them comfortable while they dug them out. And they were so impressed. The chief of department and everything was so impressed that he is taking this buffing and being a medical doctor, he's taking it to the next level. I think there were medical doctors before that were assigned to the fire department that were legitimate doctors, just like him, but they weren't honorary. They were getting paid just like the doctors now. But I don't think they were going in building collapses.
No.
And he kind of just changed everything. So he's really, in many ways, one of the first paramedics, too, that he's taking the medical knowledge he has and he's taking it to the street and right into the building. So that's kind of uncharted territory for anybody, too. This is all brand new. So because of his heroics at the Equitable fire, the following March in 1913, on the steps of City Hall, if you go to number 8, Dr. Archer is in amongst all of the heroes that were getting medals for the actions taken the previous year. And that's all the different guys that were getting medals. Some of these guys I know so much from doing all the research and everything, but there's Archer in the middle, and he's going to end up with a department medal. So he's the first civilian ever to be honored by the fire department for heroics.
Right. What year was this again, Paul? I forget.
1913.
1913.
And that was for his actions at the Equitable. He's an honorary fire medical officer, and now they've given him a department medal. So that's kind of cool. And it's just the first one he's going to get. He's going to get many of them, as it turns out.
You see, you know what I noticed here, Paul? Some guys have the old caps. Some guys have the new caps here.
It's right at the time where it's switching. And also it's, right. That's a good pickup. That's sometimes the only pictures they have available is the older picture.
Right.
So,
like your dead guy picture you take when you're in probie school.
Exactly. So, that was – see, now you look at the difference. If you look at on the far right, Mooney is up on the top there.
Yep.
That's Civil War cap. And then below it, that's Thomas Kilbride. They both worked together when Rescue 1 got formed.
Mm-hmm.
And Mooney was from 4 truck and Kilbride's from 1 truck. And you can see the difference now. It's that bell-shaped cap, like an upside-down bell.
Yeah. So it looked like I guess Mooney had more time on the job then. You see he's got his picture taken prior.
Or that was the only picture that's the picture they gave for the newspaper.
Right. Yeah.
But and it's right in between when they're switching stuff. That's another thing too. I don't have I have a lot of the orders, but I don't have all of the orders. There were special orders, and then there was other orders. I want to see if I can get the other orders. And it's a lot of, who's assigned to what alarm and class 3s and all this kind of crazy nonsense. But there's little nuggets in all of those things when Rescue 1 got 36 more boxes the second year, there would be a list of what those exact stations are and all that. And I just like to know those things for my own twist.
They have them at the library down at the.
Yeah, they do, but I don't think they microfilmed it all.
No,
or copied it all. They did on the regular orders, which is really handy.
Right.
So now we got the medal, and he gets married now in 1914. His first wife had passed away, and now he's married to another young lady, and Chief Edward Croker is his usher at his wedding. He's the former chief now. He had retired, but that's how close Dr. Archer is with the fire chiefs.
He was in.
The former fire chief is in his wedding party.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. So now we get him doing more work in 1919. Go to 9 for 1 second. I think that's the whole. Yeah, that's him getting married.
Oh, shit, bad looking.
Do you have 9?
Nope. 8-10 it goes.
Really?
I'm gonna have to yell at that tank. What happened here, tank?
All right. Anyway, it was a group shot of everybody getting a medal, and Archer was mixed in his suit. So that was his wife. And then if we go to, we'll just talk about this one. In February of 1919, it was a 4-story warehouse that used to be operated by a flour company, flour like in making bread. And now it was being used by the government, and the war had just ended, and it's a big giant government warehouse, and there's all sorts of horrible crap in this building. And spontaneous combustion starts a fire in bales of jute. And jute is a coarse fiber they make ropes out of, and they make bags, like burlap bags and stuff like that out of it. So this fire starts in this pile of jute, and it gives off smoke that you can't breathe. And now it's filled up this building. The fire is starting to spread. Nobody can do anything without a mask. Even when they send Rescue One there, it takes them 5.5 hours to put the fire out.
Wow.
And dozens of firemen were knocked out, and that's where Doc Archer and Manzer, who was the guy that helps organize Rescue One that you were talking about. Go to picture 11. That's Manzer and Archer, and Archer's driver in the middle.
That's Manzer all the way on the right?
Manzer's on the right. He wears those pince nez, however you say it, those little glasses that pinch onto your nose.
Yeah.
So yeah, like there's 2 rich guys and a fireman, but these guys, they did so much work at this one. They resuscitated 30 firemen that were knocked out.
Holy
quite
man.
a beating themselves. I think Manzer got knocked out himself. That they got a promotion in the honorary ranks. They were both brought up to deputy chief status by the chief of department. And it seems silly to us, like, oh, they got a promotion, but to them it was a big deal. And it just shows you what high regard they were held in by the brass of the department, because nobody else jumped up and resuscitated 30 firemen. These guys are doing it.
Yeah, man.
So it's amazing. So
it's nice that they get rewarded for something that they love so much, that they get that recognition from the job that they love, from the department that they love,
Right. And if you go to 12, I found the orders where they get that as a reward for long and faithful service in this department, particularly for the most heroic and faithful work at a fire at 48th Street in the East River, Manhattan, on February 17th, 1919, subjecting themselves to unusually severe hazards and resuscitating 30 firemen who were rendered dangerously sick and unconscious by the burning jute and sulfur and everything else. They are hereby promoted to the rank of honorary deputy chief to take effect. And it's pretty cool. There it is. And cool. They got the next highest badge to wear, but they kept doing the same thing they did the day before, which is going to fires and getting the shit kicked out of them
and helping guys,
and buying people coffee. So they're doing good stuff. Then in 1921, one of the ranks, Dr. Herman Reese, who was an official FDNY medical officer, he was actually getting paid. He was in charge of all the doctors. But you can see there's no animosity that here's a guy getting paid. Part of his job is to be the FDNY medical officer, and he's pals with Dr. Archer because he knows that, Archer is working for an insurance company as a doctor. I guess if you're buying insurance and you have to go get an exam, whatever it is. But I think he was so well off that they gave him a figurehead job, and his deal was, I'll work here, but if there's a fire, I'm leaving. And he was leaving all the time. So off you go. But this guy, Herman Reese, they want to endow a medal in honor of Archer. And if you've ever talked with Ed Seary, who is like a man of renown when it comes to the medals and everything in our job, I had a really good discussion with him one day. And unfortunately, like in the military, there's a hierarchy of medals. You got the Medal of Honor is on the top, and
Mhm.
then it comes down like a Christmas tree. And your Silver Star and Bronze Star and Distinguished Service Crosses and Distinguished Service Medals and all these things come down. For us, it was the Bennett Medal.
Right.
And then by antiquity, it goes down that way. And then all of a sudden, they took the Archer Medal and went, whoop, and they put it on top of the Bennett because it's going to be the best of every 3 Bennetts. It's kind of convoluted, but whatever. But they really wanted to honor Archer.
That is an honor to put that
his,
that medal above.
He would have this thing, higher. And I know what they're doing, and they still give it out, and it still works. But it kind of screwed up our flow chart a little bit. But anyway, if you throw up number 13, there's the medal.
Is that 13? Oh, it's
No,
13A.
that's 13A.
What is going on here, Tank? No Archer medal.
Oh, no, you don't have that. There's no picture of a medal in there?
Da, 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 da.
Oh,
I'm going to have to yell at Tanky. Nope.
All right. Well, anyway,
Anywho.
that was the medal, and that's given out every 3 years to the best of the Bennett medals.
Anybody ever win the Archer twice?
No.
No.
There's only been 2 guys that won the Bennett twice.
Pritchard?
Do you know them?
Is it Pritchard?
Right. And
Neary?
that's it. Very good. Tom Neary and Jack Pritchard both. And I believe Pritchard also got the Archer. I'm not sure if Neary got the Archer. He may have. He probably should have.
Mm.
But anyway, if you go to that 13A, that's probably that same car. I'd have to look at them side by side, or this is another car. I think it's an updated model, but Archer buys another car, and it has special waterproof compartments that are added, and he fills it with medical gear. It has an oxygen machine that could actually make oxygen out of the air, so he doesn't have to carry around all these tanks.
It makes oxygen out of the air?
Yeah. And I don't know how much it could do.
Right.
But it's like they have those things now, the little things. You see the people wearing them with a cannula going to a backpack, and they're walking around, and it's just sucking the oxygen out of the air for them.
Huh.
But he starts going, and it was such a hit, this car, that is Popular Science Monthly, and there's a whole article in there about him and the car and what he does for the fire department. And then if you look at 13B, you can see that picture again close up of him on the side with
2 medical bags he's got there.
Yeah. So that's a different car because it doesn't have the that big spare tire next to it.
Right. Yep.
It looks like he also has a water can behind him. So they're ready. If they pull up, they're going to fight fires, and they got a whole bunch of medical gear. So that's pretty cool. Then in 1923, there's one of the other buffs, William Kenny, the 2 Kenny brothers. They were automobile dealers, or at least one of them was. And their father had been a battalion chief. And he asked Archer to design an ambulance for the fire department. See, up to this point, the fire department didn't have its own ambulance for firefighters. They had one for horses.
Oh,
they had one for firefighters.
We said that, right?
Yeah. So if you go to 13C, that's Kenny standing up in the back. The 2 Kenny brothers. Archer is on the right side in the back, in the middle there.
Right.
And Kenlin's in the middle with the gray hat. So that's the first day they got the new ambulance. Archer designed how it would be, and Kenny had it built. And then Kenny also did the first floodlight rig and all sorts of stuff. So these guys, they were in the automobile industry, so they were coming up with some pretty cool looking apparatus for the fire department at that time. So now we have another one where Archer makes his bones. This is March 30th, 1923. And they're having a major fire on East 26th Street, and the department's down there for 10 hours. They have a wall collapsed. 2 guys from Engine 26 are killed by the collapsing wall. Julius Spanier and William Aiello, both members of Engine 26, are killed when this wall falls. A whole bunch of other guys are hurt. Rescue 1's down there. Archer is in the pile. As people are getting uncovered, Archer's working on them. And right towards the end of the operation, they've been down there now for a long time, digging through all of this. Then word comes that there is another building collapse. And they pull Rescue 1 and Doc Archer off the pile, and they send them to the other building collapse. And that's at 39 Eldridge Street, where a giant demolition job was underway, and the building collapsed on the demolition guys. So if you go to 14.
Nope, it goes right to 16. Oh, shit. Where's my phone? I'm going to have to call.
There's no 15 or 16?
There's a 16. There's no 14 or 15.
All right, go to 16.
All right, Ralph. Which collapse is this now? This is the one that's
Eldridge Street. What the other pictures show even better, but there's a whole that wall behind them is a floor. That whole angled wall that's cantilevered there. That's one of the upper floors. Everything is hinged and slid down, and underneath all those floors, they found a little passageway. And if you look at that picture, there's a little arrow there in the middle to the left. That's a worker.
Oh, I see it.
Yeah, that's a worker that's being taken out. Now, if you look at the firemen, you'll notice that the 4 or 5 or 6 guys there to the left are all wearing soft caps. They're either wearing uniform hats or caps.
I thought they were civilians. Huh.
They're Rescue 1. I've been noticing on all these pictures that in building collapses especially, they wouldn't wear their helmets.
Why, they get caught up on stuff?
Well, that's it. If you're thinking back, if you look at the guy on the bottom of the picture there to the left, that's the high eagle front piece. So the top of their helmet is about 6 inches over the top of your head.
Right.
So if you're trying to crawl into a confined space and you got this helmet that all it wants to do is come off your head. So they didn't wear helmets in building collapses.
Huh.
And I think probably one of the reasons they switched from the high eagle to the regular helmet as we know it now is just because the front piece just took up so much space in any operation you were doing that they went with a lower profile. I don't know if the fireman asked for it or what started it, why it came about, but it happened. So
it doesn't even look like they have their rubber coats on. It looks like they have
most of it. Yeah, the rescue guys are wearing old uniform coats, and they're going through stuff when they go to these chemical leaks and everything. Sometimes they're coming home and just throwing everything away because it's all falling apart.
The first urban rescue uniform, bro. What is it? 1990.
So now at this building collapse, Archer goes in with the rescue guys, and there are workers at a pin. And he's giving them shots of morphine and feeding them soup and all the stuff that he does when you're pinned for a while. And then he stays in there and he's helping move this first, take that off. And, it's a little bit like pickup sticks when you work in a building collapse. And they finally get the last guy coming out, which could very well be that gentleman with the little arrow there. And now behind him are the other couple rescue guys that are in the collapse, along with Dr. Archer. So they're going to send the guy that was just rescued out. Then they're going to start to come out. And as they're making their way through that giant pile there, the pile shifts and Archer's foot gets wedged between some beams and he can't get his foot out. So they're going to try to cut it. They're going to try to use jacks. And finally, he is able to wiggle his foot out of his shoe. And he just abandons his shoe in the building and leaves. And the mayor is there now. So they take all the guys from Rescue 1 and Dr. Archer in his one shoe on, one shoe off, standing in the street. And the mayor comes and congratulates each of them on the great job, the wonderful rescue that they did. And everybody gets their hands shook. And then off they go and everybody goes back in service. So I believe the chief of department wrote up Archer for doing this great job, and his paperwork goes in. and I have the minutes for the meeting from the Board of Merit, and it has the whole thing there for Archer, and then it mentions, and then actually the whole rescue was done by the guys from Rescue One and the guys from this truck and that truck, and Archer did this and that, and they said, well, we'll have a different meeting, a special meeting just for those guys, and we'll figure out what they get because we're giving Archer a Class 1. Okay, that's cool. They never have the meeting. So the guys that did all the real hard work got totally screwed up.
Oh, man.
They got left off the roll of merit. And, what are you going to do? But anyway, Archer ends up that he gets the Bennett Medal and a Department Medal.
Archer got the Bennett?
The Bennett. So in 1924, he gets the Bennett Medal. So if you go to 18, there he is. On his uniform to the right, that's the Department Medal that he already got for the Equitable fire, and now he's getting the Bennett Medal and another Department Medal on his uniform. And at the time, he wore this a couple of times, this uniform. Being a doctor's clothing, especially in those days before modern scrubs, were like lab coats, and it was white. They would wear white to show cleanliness and everything. So he wore a white uniform to show that he was a doctor. I think that wore off after a while when it was probably impossible to keep it clean.
Yeah.
So
what is this one here? We skipped over 17. That's 17.
Well, that 17 is also part of that.
Oh, okay. Collapse.
That's a long view.
Right.
This is from the other side now. So they were going in.
I see where the guy with the derby's standing in the back. So it was flipped around. That guy with the derby.
Right, exactly.
We saw his back before.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. So now, if in 1927, do we have 19?
No. Pizza delivery.
So if we go to, there we go. Deputy Chief Ed Worth and 4 firemen were knocked out. Now that's the Schaefer method. That's resuscitation, like before there was CPR and everything. They would lay you flat on your belly, and they would squeeze your lower part of your back, and it would do a little bit of chest compression and a little bit of changing the pressure in your lungs so air would go back and forth, and it worked. That's what they had. A better version was designed later, but right there, what you see is basically what firefighters and doctors were doing.
I've never seen that in my life, Paul. That's
until
somebody said, "I know, let's flip them over," and actually push that on their chest.
Well, they were working on it. There were guys that were spending a lot of time talking about this. I would think that Dr. Archer and whoever his driver was, and a couple of these guys that were going to this stuff all the time, they were probably doing this method weekly,
right,
on people. And then eventually, when you're working on a deputy chief that's knocked out, you got to really be paying attention. So at this particular fire, he resuscitates 5, including a deputy chief. And if you go to 21, we go to the Ritz Tower explosion in 1932. Now at that particular thing, that there was a paint locker in a subcellar that exploded, and it killed 8 firefighters and officers, like boom, like right off the bat.
Wow. That's a pretty big hit for one fire, man. 8
yeah,
guys.
that's another whole one we could go really deep on. But that's Archer right there. He had just been working on this guy who was laying on the ground, and he just stood up to stretch his legs, but that's him in the white with no hat on, with the white shirt sleeves.
Right. Guy looks burnt up on the ground a little bit.
Yeah. Well, a whole bunch of guys that really got banged up really bad from that. Like we said, 8 guys got killed, and a whole bunch of people never went back to work. It was pretty tough. It was that whole battalion over there. They got gobbled up by that thing.
We have this one too. 20. What is 20? Is that the same fire?
Yeah, that's another view of that. Now, in those show windows at this particular thing, when the explosion happened down below, That was a jewelry store. And there was all sorts of diamonds and rubies and rings and jewelry, and everything got blasted out the windows.
Whoops.
And across the
Freebie.
sidewalk. Yeah. So
Wow.
it was kind of a giant mess. But now you can see it's a little bit along now. We're in the 20s, the 30s, so the rigs have changed. The helmets, the front pieces.
Also, paved streets. They didn't have paved streets in the prior ones.
Yeah, well, it's a good street. However, I think that's 57th Street there.
Right.
So, it's a good wide street. And then in 1935, the one we did a few episodes back, the Furman Street fire, number 22. Archer goes to that.
There's an ambulance.
Do you have the one before that, 22 or no?
Nope, 21 to 23.
All right. Well, 22 was that Furman Street fire with the rubber burning down on the docks of Brooklyn. And Archer worked 26 continuous hours at the Furman Street fire. And he was forced by Chief Kenlin to take a rest, to leave the aid station and take a rest. They tried to do a best estimate as they could, 1,046 cases of smoke poisoning.
1,046 cases.
Yeah.
Man, that guy was a workhorse, man.
He worked 26 hours there and finally had to be ordered away to take a break.
That's probably not like, you're on a 24. Hey, let me go grab a cup of coffee, sit down a little bit. It was 20. You worked 26 hours. He worked 26 hours.
And I bet you a lot of these guys he worked on 2, 3, 4 times, that they would get up and they would go back and they'd get knocked out again.
That was my question to you. Did he branch out into other boroughs? I guess he did.
He did. Right there. He's in Brooklyn here. Yeah, he did.
Right.
He would go to major fires. I guess it was kind of up to him to pick and choose, but he went to major fires right at this time too. Right when Rescue 2 started, they got off to a flying stop because they got knocked out at the first fire they went to. But shortly after that, Rescue 2 really hit their stride. And right from 25, 26, 27, they were doing probably the same amount of work that Rescue 1 was doing, except it was in Brooklyn.
Right.
And they were doing amazing stuff. All these ammonia leaks and poisonous gases and all this other crazy stuff from all the manufacturing and the warehousing of all this. There were no rules in those days. They would just open up a warehouse and pack it full of everything. And then when it went on fire, they were trying to tell you as they were running down the block what was in there. So
they had all in-house training, right? They trained their own guys in the firehouse of Rescue 2.
Right, but that was a whole nother long thing on that. But yeah, and a little skeptical at first that they didn't do the same thing. But once he got them trained up, once O'Leary got Rescue 2 trained up, they were knocking the doors off of everything. They were doing a hell of a job.
Yeah, but like you said, they almost died on the first fire that they went
on
to.
the first fire. Yeah. Yeah, that wasn't good.
No, that's not a good
So
thing.
now we go to 1940, and did you showed 23? Okay,
Yeah.
So 1940, we there's a Medal Day ceremony at the World's Fair, and it was the 1939-1940 World's Fair over there. It had the little a sphere and a pyramid thing next to it. Remember, it was on my father's high school yearbook. I think he graduated that year. And it was a big deal, like the World's Fairs usually were. And especially in the older days, the World's Fair was way more important than it is now because they didn't have televisions and all the rest.
Yeah, world was a lot bigger back then.
They brought the world to you, and you went to the place and you visited it. So they were doing Medal Day there. And Mayor LaGuardia promoted a couple of different people. He had just promoted one of the deputy chiefs to deputy fire commissioner. And then LaGuardia, who was a fire buff himself, he sees Dr. Archer in the crowd and he goes, would you like to be a fire commissioner? And Archer does like, me? Yeah. He goes, would you like to be a fire commissioner? And he goes, sure, come on up. Put your hand up, and they make him second deputy fire commissioner.
Just like that.
Just like that. And he had just recently retired from the Aetna life insurance where he was working, so I guess they figured he had a little more time if he didn't have to go to the other job. he could, work for the fire department now. And so now he's going to devote his full-time job now is taking care of firemen and being a deputy fire commissioner.
Like he wasn't doing that before, but all right. Right.
Yeah. So now he's had this job for a little while, and in 1946, it's New Year's Eve, and they get a bad fire at 749 Broadway in Manhattan, down near 8th Street. And they got a major fire going in this building, and the top floor collapses, and a whole bunch of guys are trapped inside. And Archer is out in a tuxedo. He was at a New Year's Eve party.
A swanky New Year's Eve party.
There's no fire, you're at the party. If there's a fire, you say goodbye to your wife and you go buff the fire. So he's there in a tuxedo. This guy's trapped. So he takes the tuxedo off. He's wearing the rest of his tuxedo. He goes into the building collapse with his bow tie on and starts out with a white shirt. And then he goes and he hooks up with the captain of Rescue 1. And they are working on the guys that are trapped in the collapse. And they got this one guy, Fireman Walsh, in there, and he's in a lot of pain. So Archer gives him some morphine, and he's crawling on his stomach to get in there, all this stuff. It took a long time. And after the 10 hours, that guy, he passed away in the collapse. They couldn't get him out in time. So you had Fireman Walsh got killed, and Battalion Chief Hogan were killed in this collapse. And it's also weird to note that at this particular fire, Rescue 1 was changing quarters. So they went from down on Spring Street, and then they went to Lafayette Street. So they left one firehouse, went to a building collapse, and never went back to that same firehouse because the next day they were scheduled to go to the new one. So they just drove over to the new firehouse. But both Archer and the captain of Rescue 1 get medals for this.
This guy's amazing, bro. This guy's seen more fire duty than most firemen.
Yeah, you have 25?
Yeah.
So here he is getting the O'Dwyer. Bro. He's getting the O'Dwyer medal and the department medal. So he's now got 5 medals on his chest.
Wow.
That's impressive by anybody's standards. But the guy's been around a long time too.
I was just going to say, what is he on now? 40, 50 years?
Yeah, he's got like 50 years on the job now.
Right.
So so he's 78 years old in that picture.
I was going to say, I said he looks a little long in the tooth now, man.
Yeah. So now he when was that? That was 46. So he gets the medal in 47.
That's amazing to me. He's 78 years old. He's still crawling into collapses, bro.
He still is, yeah. So then in 1949, you see, they still had the problem. The ambulance service really wasn't like it is now. The department had an ambulance, but it's just a glorified taxi cab, with a bed in it. It's nothing like what they can do today.
Right.
Archer wanted to have a place where, depending on if it's horrible weather, whatever it is, I want a place where my firemen can be safe, under control, and whatever. So he designed an ambulance that was like an ambulance nobody else ever thought of before. And you got 26.
Mm-hmm.
That's
it was like the Merv, right?
Well, yeah, but now this is in 1949, and it was actually a mobile hospital. They would come in that thing, pick him up at his house. That was also kept at Engine 56, and that would go off. It could treat numerous guys, like 9 or 10 guys at the same time, could be stretched out in there on oxygen. It was piped in oxygen. There were automatic heating things. It had its own generator, a cache of medical supplies, drugs, under lock and key, you name it. All this stuff was in there. And the idea was, we don't have to have a bunch of firemen laying around unconscious on the sidewalk anymore. we can put them in this nice climate-controlled area. And it was used for many years, and that was one of Dr. Archer's babies.
That man was a forward thinker, that's for sure, man.
Yeah, yeah. So
That thing amazes me. Look at that. For 1949,
yep.
way ahead of its time, man.
And if you go to 74 Engine, which is in that same house now, 56 eventually went up to the Bronx as a squad, I believe, and then eventually somehow got turned into 59 Truck. And then 74 Engine left 77th Street and went over to 83rd Street to fill the open firehouse. There is a plaque there with like a bust of Dr. Archer on it.
That's
because
cool.
that's where his car, ambulance, and then the big bus ambulance were always kept because it was right around the corner from his house. So
have you gone there yet? Must be cool to
anybody takes a look over there, or anybody out there, take a picture of it and send it to us.
It must be cool to walk around in it, knowing the history in that building.
Oh yeah,
you know?
yeah. Well, that's where I started, 74 Engine. I used to look at that thing.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I spent a little over a year there.
Oh
Yep,
wow,
I
I'm gonna have
think
to. There you go. I'm gonna have to stop by that and just walk around and look at it, man.
Yeah, it's cool. So now that ambulance comes out in 49, but Doc Archer's an old man. He was 78, 79, 80 years old now. And it's starting to get to be the point that you can just do whatever you do for so long, and then you can't do it anymore.
Right.
And on April 15th, 1954, Harry Archer stopped responding to fires and entered Doctor's Hospital, suffering from a respiratory ailment. And
no shit, man. All the smoke without a mask.
Yep. He turned 86 while he was in the hospital. And then sadly, after a month in the hospital, he passed away on May 17th in 1954. And he had a full FDNY funeral from St. Patrick's Cathedral. And they buried him up in Sleepy Hollow Cemetery in Tarrytown. And when he passed away, he had 60 years of service to the FDNY.
Has anybody surpassed that? Do you know?
60 oh no, I
not even Smokey Joe.
The only, I guess, Feeham was about as close as you possibly can come to putting that kind of time in. You know, people just don't stay that long.
Right.
If you go to 27, we can just slowly scroll through the last pictures that we have.
Oh man, still doing it. Look at that.
Yeah, that's as an older guy. That's him a little bit younger there. Again, wearing one of those kind of soft crush hats like the Rescue One guy's wearing.
He had any children?
I don't believe so.
I never had kids, huh? Oh, there's the white uniform.
Yeah, that's him in the parade. I think that's in the 50th anniversary parade of the FDNY. And they're on their way. You can see the ground rising up behind them.
On Riverside?
They're on their way to the Fireman's Memorial. You know how the ground shifts over there?
Yeah, on Riverside.
Yeah, so that's
matter of fact, the last guy we talked to, he's the one who put that up there, right? Who was that? That monument.
Yeah, we talked about that in the last one. That was because of Big Hearted Charlie.
Big
Hearted Charlie got killed, and then
Strauss, right?
And Mr. Strauss, raised all the money. Well, it was one of the.
That's a good picture of him, man. That's a really good picture.
There he is younger. That's probably 1912, 1913, something like that. And then probably what he was really most noted for was just taking care of the average fireman. There's a brother from 26 Engine getting his hand stitched up. There's not a glove in sight.
No.
I wonder how many stitches he threw in the hands of firefighters. It's incredible.
We've seen this one too before. That's
here's one of my favorite pictures. There's two buffs and a super famous guy. It's Archer in the middle. So that's right after he got the single medal. I think he decided not to wear the ice cream suit anymore. On the right, that's one of the brothers.
With the ambulance, the original ambulance?
Yes, exactly, with the ambulance. Kenny. So that's William Kenny at the right, and left is Charlie Rankin. Did we do him already?
We did. I believe we did. Yeah.
He did him. And
Great shot.
Rankin got a medal for the Equitable fire, and then he got the administrative medal for his great work on figuring out how to run the subway fires and emergencies
Oh,
after
yeah, right. We
one
talked
in
about that.
1915.
Yeah. We said he looked like Phil Ruvalo, remember?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
And he ended up, until he took charge of the fire boats towards the very end of his career, he was the primary aide for Croker and Kenlin, and he probably went to a million fires.
Oh
And,
my God. Can you imagine?
you know, the only guy who saw more fire than Croker and Kenlin and Archer was Rankin right there.
Oh, yeah? I was going to say
Yeah.
Smokey Joe.
Well, Smokey Joe too. Like,
Yeah.
and all of those guys, it's really hard because they went to everything. How can
I
you
know.
single out a thing they did if you went to every single friggin' job there was?
Hey, by the way, if you're interested, I wanted to tell you, Croker's Mansion is for sale now. I just saw a for sale sign on it outside.
You can keep scrolling through. We got a couple more just to show you
Sure.
some of his time. That's a little bit later. That's working with Rescue 3 up on northern part of Harlem there. Again, no gloves.
Stitching up a hand or something.
An older guy, yeah, that's somebody from 14 Trucks, so that's up in Harlem as well. Get it in your eyes. He's not too old in that picture, so that's kind of good.
No, it's not. It's at 25 and 50.
There he is in a tuxedo. Now, that was,
Holy
he
crap.
responded to this multiple alarm here, and that other lady in the white, she's also a doctor, and they were working on people that were knocked out.
Wow.
Like, these things went all the time. You know, him responding to things is just regular, but you don't see him in a tuxedo that often. But
No.
he's got
Unless he's crawling in a collapse,
Yeah.
Then you might see him in a tux.
Amazing. And there he is again with his probably his driver, and then working on this guy at a fire on 8th Avenue. That's the cover of a WNYF.
And number 41, here we go.
That's
man, that was his funeral?
That's his funeral on 5th Avenue in front of St. Patrick's Cathedral.
And what year was this? Did he pass? 50?
He passed away in 58, was it? 54. 1954.
Would it be great if
he had just turned 86,
right?
And he had 60 years of service responding for free for the New York City Fire Department.
That's like they got to get him better than 3/4 there, bro. You got to get 4/4. 60 years.
Yeah,
he's got some pension.
Well,
right?
there's one guy I'm researching that I hope we get to do soon. His name was Thomas Ahern. And he's got quite an interesting story, and he retired on full pay.
So he spent a lot of years there.
Because of the length of service and the unbelievable pounding that he took and the injuries that he sustained. But we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. That's a whole story right there. But he went out on full pay.
So we got plenty in the hopper.
Yep.
I thoroughly enjoyed this one. You know, all these guys. Paul, if you could sit down with any one of them and have lunch, who would it be?
Well, Archer for sure, because 60 years.
Right.
You know, he was there for 60 years. He knew all the major players, all the bosses, all the buffs, all the guys that I'm writing about. He was in the thick of all of that. I think also that guy Rankin, who we just had in that picture before, I'd like to sit and talk with him because he's got the fireman. He's halfway between a chief and a fireman, you know, being an officer, but working as an aide. So, you know, they know the inner workings of everything, but, you know, they're friends with the low life and the hoity-toity guys too at the same time.
Right.
So they're doing all right.
Hey, listen, if you could have another 10 years left in you if you went by his right, you could have another decade to go.
Well, another one would be Jack Binns. And you know, it's funny, you know, you guys we were talking about the nicknames, and did you have a good nickname or whatever? I'm starting to pick up like John Howe. They called him Johnny. nickname in the firehouse, and Francis Blessing was Frank, and
Good-hearted Charlie.
and John Binns. Well, yeah, I don't know if they big-hearted, but I don't know if, hey, Chuck, I don't know. Maybe you called him Chuck once, and that was it.
That was it.
But and John Binns was called Jack. But
Right.
you have to do so much reading to find an offhand thing
Right.
like that where it's, oh, Jack, oh, that's what they call him. I'm just used to calling people by their given name.
Right.
And, it's fun when you find out what they were really called. So,
You know what? Nobody beats Daredevil Dan for me, bro.
Daredevil Dan. There you go.
If you want to know who that is, start watching. Oh, Mr. Hashagen, as always, we bring these gentlemen to light who people have no idea who they are, and they really should. I appreciate it. And I bet you these guys and their families would appreciate what you're doing here for these guys.
Yeah. I have a little book I try to keep track. So many people reach out to me, which is wonderful, and they send me pictures or tell me about their loved one, or they're all excited that, oh, you remembered my grandfather or my uncle.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I recently found somebody's. How do you know that's him in the picture? And I explained it to them. It's him. It's him. And they're amazed. And I just got a picture of a Rescue One helmet from an officer in the 1930s and 40s. It's the smaller version, but a really cool picture. And what they did, and I guess it stopped probably in the 30s or 40s, but like an officer's front piece, it's white with, in this case, a number 1, but it's going to be blue, right? It'd be black if it was an engine, red if it was a truck. But then on the outside border was a blue band that was painted on it. Because I remember in doing the research somewhere along the line, I realized that, and we went and got blue front pieces, old style front pieces that a bunch of us wore for several years at work, and nobody said a thing. We're wearing old style blue front pieces. And one of the officers just came there, and Jimmy, and I said, in the old days, it used to have blue trim. Paint it on there, Duck. So I painted the blue trim on his helmet for him. And nobody said a word. Nobody knew.
Little inside joke.
It was always, they're doing some kind of test thing. It's okay, yeah, don't worry about it.
Do we know why they originally went with red for a ladder and black for an engine and blue for a rescue?
Well, the blue came around much later.
Right.
Exactly how and why it started, I don't know. But you have to come up with something different, and then like all the little company colors too to differentiate companies with the tape on the Hashagans and all the rest of it.
Right.
It worked out that you could tell your stuff at a glance. But when a lot of those things exactly happened, I think there were things that worked out over time. Well, but once they had that red and black, then everything that was figured out later. Like
I was sent the picture.
The squads and
the squads, we like to say, were gold, not yellow. And even in the old squads. But Kleehouse sent me a picture of one of the first ones, and it was green, actually.
Yes. Yeah, I was going to say that. It was this light green color for the original squads that they had.
Yep.
Yeah.
And now the Marine Company has green.
Right.
And that does it, Mr. Hashagen. Thank you so much.
As usual, my friend.
It is. I like it. It's very intimate with just me and you, Let me get to our outro here. Stand by. All right, guys. So we will see you on the next one, because there is no end in sight. We've got plenty of legendary firemen to get up here. And if you have any suggestions, send it to koopspodcast@gmail.com, and we'll certainly look at it. Right, Mr. Hashagen?
You got it, buddy.
All right, Living Legend. We will see you soon, guys. Stay low and go.
Established in 1930 and under the current ownership since 1987, the New Jersey Fire Equipment Company handles a complete line of fire department equipment and supplies. Headquartered in Greenbrook, the company operates full 3M Scott service facilities in Ridgefield Park and Toms River, staffed by 10 fully authorized Scott certified technicians with a fleet of 6 fully equipped service vans. All New Jersey Fire technicians and sales representatives are active or retired firefighters, officers or chief officers, career and volunteer. They understand the business and the importance of their work. New Jersey Fire has represented Scott since Earl Scott entered the SCBA business at the end of World War II. Among other leading manufacturers represented by New Jersey Fire are Globe and Firedex Turnout Gear, Mercedes Hose, Task Force Tips and Akron Brass, Hygenol, Firehooks, Arctic Compressors, MSA Carnes Helmets, ChemGuard Foam, Alkalite and Duo Safety Ladders, BA Face Shield Protectors, Truckman's Choice Saws, Grove's Gear Racks and Washer Dryers, Supervac Fans, RPI, Streamlight, and many others. A New Jersey incorporated and based company, sales and service are limited to the state of New Jersey. Find us now at www.njfe.com. That's www.njfe.com.
Need a new floor for your fire station? Choose an Armor Tough interlocking flooring system to cover your aging, stained, cracked concrete or epoxy floor. Armor Tough has been around for nearly 20 years and has proven to be the best choice in renovating your station's floors, covering nearly 600 floors across the country. Proudly made in America, Armor Tough comes with a lifetime warranty and are usually installed in 1 or 2 days, depending on the size of your station, with virtually no disruption in your station's operation. Our system is guaranteed from chipping, cracking, peeling, breaking, or staining. The tiles are stain resistant and impervious to chemicals or volatiles that are used in the fire service. Damage one tile, lift and replace without anyone knowing. And once installed, your floor would be easy to clean with just soap and water. Is your current floor slippery? Eliminate the slip with Armor Tough.
You asked me what the friction coefficient is, Professor Kubler? Well, here it is. Fiddle-flap. Poppycocking fiddle-flap. The friction coefficient.
It keeps your firefighters on their feet instead of on their ass. Not only for apparatus rooms, install an Armor Tough floor in any room. Choose from the hundreds of colors from the Designer Series or from the Utility Series floor coverings. Are you in need of gear racks, an extractor, or gear dryers? Install an Armor Tough floor in your apparatus bay and take advantage of a deep discount, saving you thousands of dollars on any of the Grove's product line. Why install a breakable epoxy floor that will need replacing in 5 to 10 years when you could have a floor that will last a lifetime? The Armor Tough flooring system is half the price of epoxy and will last a lifetime without issue. Watch as we drop a Hashagen from 75 feet on an Armor Tough floor and you won't see any damage to it. Don't try this with concrete or epoxy. Join the hundreds of career and volunteer fire departments nationwide who have chosen an Armor Tough interlocking tile floor. Call Vince today for a no-obligation quote at 908-917-7697. Again, 908-917-7697.
Like I'm a jester? I'm here to amuse you or something?
Like I'm a clown?
A lot of 5-6. When you get me the apartment number, please, on the floor above.
Yep.
I'm still running the fuck out of a burning building, though, just for the record.
The apartment is underneath.
I'm in the 2-minute warning.
Oh my god.
Order a couple of firemen into a flat above a fire.
I smell the smoke.